This is Viva Fry.
I'm Dr. Peter McCullough.
This is Tom Luongo.
This is Chuck Prodnick.
This is Alex Kreiner.
Hey, this is Brad Wall.
This is JP Sears.
Hi, this is Frank Peretti.
This is Tammy Peterson.
This is Danielle Smith.
This is James Lindsay.
Hey, this is Brett Kissel, and you're listening to the Shaun Newman Podcast.
Welcome to the podcast, folks. How's everybody doing? Happy Monday. How you doing? I'm doing pretty good on this side. Let's start here with a little silver gold bull, shall we? The deadline for making contributions to your RRSP, TFSA, RRIF, or Kids RESP is March 2nd, and you can add physical gold and silver to your account at any time after that. Once you've made the contribution, you can switch it over. But certainly March 2nd is the big deadline, and if you're wanting to do that with silver gold bull, that is, can help with all their in-house solutions, whether buying, selling, or storing precious metals. You can text or email Graham down in the show notes. You can text me to find out more as well. I can direct you, in the right direction if you can't find that. For anything to do with precious metals or for future silver deals exclusively for you, the SNP listener. Once again, silvergoldbull.ca.com, depending on what side of the border you're on, and down in the show notes is all the information. I've been keeping you up to date on the old silver price. I might as well do that before I move on. It's 106.55 Canadian, so it's been bouncing around. If you're watching it, it went down to 108, and then it popped up to 120, and then now it's back down to 106. Well, actually, it got a little lower than that, 97, and then it's back up to 106. So it is all over the map. I think Nick said it best when I had him on a few weeks ago. Silver's a wagon. Yeah, silver's a wagon, and we're paying attention on this side. Bow Valley Credit Union. Well, they've opened up their new spot in Red Deer. That's their lending and advice center in Red Deer as they work towards opening a full-service branch. It's all about lending, deposits, real financial advice. You can open accounts, talk through lending options, and get help with banking, all in the space designed for conversations, not transactions. If you want smarter banking with gold, silver, Bitcoin, sound money, and personal freedom, BVCU is now open in Red Deer. That's that lending and advice center. You can also go to bowvalleycu.com for all your banking needs here in Alberta. Profit River, when it comes to firearms, well, head to profitriver.com. They service all of Canada, whether we're talking firearms, optics, accessories. Just go to profitriver.com and find out more. Windsor Plywood. I tell you what, the weather the last couple days, it feels like deck season, doesn't it? And deck season always reminds me of Windsor Plywood here in Lloydminster. You can, get all the wood from them when it comes to mantles, decks, windows, doors, sheds, podcast studio table, character wood. Stop in today, Windsor Plywood. Tell the team that I sent you. Cornerstone Forum, March 28th. Okay, are your ears on right now? Okay, I'm recording this. This is not Monday morning. Okay, so I don't know what the number is today. What I can tell you is, as recording this, there are 67 tickets left for the Cornerstone Forum March 28th. When I tell you, stop procrastinating, I know there's somebody out there that is identical to me. And it's like, I just get it. Yeah, I'm going to get it. I'm going to. Just pause it. Go to showpass.com/Cornerstone26. Buy your ticket before they are gone. I said we would have this thing sold out. I thought 2 weeks before the show. Now I'm like, holy crap. At this pace, it's going to be the end of February, if not sooner. And if you're the guy like me, or gal, that likes procrastinating and going and just buying at the door, I don't know if that's going to be an option this year. Everything tells me it's not. 67 tickets remain. Yes, we're back March 28th in Calgary at the Westin Calgary Airport. And you should go grab your ticket immediately. Whether you're watching or on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, Rumble, X, Facebook, Substack, make sure to subscribe. Make sure to leave a review. If you want to get in on some of the conversations happening kind of in the behind the scenes of the podcast, Substack is where you need to be. Become a paid member there. We started it last week with Armstrong. Tom Luongo is coming on this week, and if you're wanting to get questions in on or get into that discussion, one of the things we've decided to do and trial out here over the next probably month or more is on recurring guests. When I know they're coming on, throwing it out on Substack and allowing the paid members to get in on that conversation. You can kind of get one of your questions answered, or at least formulate some of the questions that are going to be brought up in the conversation. So if you're wanting to do that, Substack is the one place where you can support what I do, and we're trying to add some things in that make it a little more interactive, if you would. All right, that's all I got for you today. Let's get on to that tale of the tape. Today's guest is a former Toronto stockbroker. Now he's helping clients invest in property or businesses in Brazil. I'm talking about Carlos de Silva. So buckle up. Here we go. Welcome to the Shaun Newman Podcast. Today I'm joined by Carlos de Silva. Sir, thanks for hopping on.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Well, I got to give a shout out to... I hope I'm saying this right, Michael Layden, for first connecting us. I point this out to every time a listener seems to point me in the right direction of a new podcast guest, that I appreciate all the listeners constantly filling my inbox with different people to follow up with. But before we get too far down the line, Carlos, let's just start nice, easy. Give us your story so the people tuning in can learn a little bit about who Carlos is.
Cool. I was born in Portugal, so I speak Portuguese, which is a help for what we're going to be talking about here. But I'm a Toronto boy. I went to Toronto when I was 5 years old, so been in Toronto all my life. I come from the financial sector. I was a stockbroker in Toronto for almost 22 years, right? Okay. And in you're a lot younger than me, Shaun. I was involved in the markets when you remember our old Nortel, our big telecom company.
Yes.
I was in the height of my career when every bank. I remember there was commercials on TV, commercials on radio, telling every Canadian you got to buy Nortel, blue chip, safe like crazy. And I personally witnessed that stock go from 200 a share down to zero, right? Okay. I don't remember which. I think, if I'm not mistaken, it was either the teachers' pension fund or the firemen. Like one of these large pension funds was heavily invested in Nortel. They almost went belly up because of it, right? So it was and I remember I came home that day and I told my wife, like, this is just paper. Like, it's not worth anything. So in early 90, my business partner and I, from the firm as well, we decided we were going to get into real estate, right? Okay. And because I lived in Scarborough, what I did originally is me and my ex-wife bought three bedroom bungalows with basement apartments. Okay. My business partner, John, out in Oshawa, decided he was going to buy an 11-plex out in Oshawa. Right. And I remember over the next couple of years, Shaun, we used to have kind of friendly debates. He'd say, you're nuts because every time you have to shovel snow, you got 3 different properties. Mine are all over in one place. And I get that. But what I started realizing is I had a lot more flexibility. And what I mean by flexibility is we all know that from 1990 right till, 2013, the market was just, you didn't have to be. I remember we used to go to parties sometimes because I'll skip ahead of here. By about 2000, 2001, 2002, my ex-wife and I had 15 rental properties, all 3-bedroom bungalows with basement apartments. Because I'm a kind of guy that if I get into a niche and I see that it's working, I kind of just stick there. You know what I mean? Right? Okay. So we had 15 properties. And what I found is that I had flexibility because in the 90s, you'd buy a house for 180, 190. Next year, it's up 20%. The year after that, it's up another 20%. And I was flipping a lot of them. Some of them I'd rental them and then resell them and buy back. So I had more flexibility because I'm dealing in a product that's 190 to 200. His 11-plex was at the time, I think, about 400 or 500. So that to me was a lot harder product to be as flexible as I was, right? And so I liked it because of that. So like I said, we had rentals and we used to do an average of about 2 flips a year. Now, in the 90s, I don't know about in Alberta, but in Toronto and Scarborough, in the 90s, I was buying a 3-bedroom bungalow for about 180 to 185,000. I put about 20,000 into it to furnish it, paint it, so I'm in for about 210. I'd flip that product within like 8-9 months for 270, 275. It was a phenomenal market. Right. Okay. Today you can't. Like you can go to the most horrible neighborhood in Toronto, a 3-bedroom bungalow. You're talking 1.2, 1.3 mil. right? So there's no, in my opinion, there's no more value there. Now, what happened, why I got to Brazil is that one of my tenants that lived in one of our basement apartments was Brazilian. Okay, his name was Alvaro. We became very good friends, and started asking me like, "What do you do?" So I've always been interested in real estate. I've invested, 30 years ago, I invested in Costa Rica, Panama, always beachfront property. I'm a big believer in beachfront property. There's an old saying, God's not making any more beachfront, right? So I've always liked it. And he said, well, you should go check out Brazil. So I came down in 2003 for the first time. Okay, spent about 2 weeks in Brazil. I'm in the northeast of Brazil, which is three main cities: Fortaleza, Recife, and Natal, which is the one that I decided to work in. And I fell in love with it. But I started investing in Brazil. Not, I wouldn't say heavily, but 2005 I started investing in Brazil, and then post COVID I went really heavy in Brazil, and now about 90% of everything that I do in real estate is in Brazil. I think it's a far better market. So I'm just gonna have to shut that down. So it's a far better market than what I can see. You know what I mean?
I just lost you for a second, Carlos. Let's talk again.
Yeah,
Oh, you.
yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Yeah.
Sorry, you mentioned you invested in Brazil back in 2005, and then through COVID you started more heavily, and I kind of lost you there for a second.
Yeah. So what happened, Shaun? Yeah, from 2005 till 2018, I was going back and forth. It'd be like 2 months in Brazil, 8 months in Toronto, right? Okay. And then I think I don't know if we want to go into the thing of why I decided to stay in Brazil because of what happened with
Well,
culture.
before we jump too far,
Okay.
I'm gonna pull you back for a second here,
Okay.
Carlos. I want to go back to Nortel for a second because
Okay.
what year did Nortel all that go down?
Oh, I'm horrible with years, but I think in the 90s sometime.
Okay, so I am just but a kid. So the reason
Okay.
I ask about Nortel is you said you had the stark realization this isn't real. I was hoping you could explain that just a touch more.
Sure. Sean, I came out, I left the brokerage industry. I decided to leave the industry. And not, I'm not going to say it's because I was smart. It was just coincidence. I left in 2000. I decided that I was going to get out in 2000, right? Okay. Just before that whole Y2K thing from 1999 to 2000. And I left because I honestly, and to this day, I believe it, um, the average Joe does not stand a chance to ever make a dime in the brokerage industry. I've talked to a lot of friends, my ex-wife being one of them, that still she's been investing in the stock market for 25, 30 years. And when I talk to most people, if you average it out over the last, if you had a portfolio for 20, 30 years, you're either basically flat or down a little bit. It's a loser's game. The insiders will always make money. I'll give you a great example. Probably the best example I can give you. I used to work for like a small boutique firm. Okay, and what happened? It was an interesting thing because when I first got my license, I knew nothing about the markets, and I went to my manager. I said, what do I do? I don't know anything about this, and he gave me a piece of advice that I'll never forget. He said, Carlos, pick one stock, get to know it really, really well. So when you talk to a client, you sound intelligent, right? Okay. So the stock that I decide, oh my God, now I'm trying to remember the name. Anyways, it was a small little junior mining company, right? I'm trying to remember, the name will come to me because I used to say this story so often, but the name, it wasn't Briex, it was another little mining company out of Northern Ontario. So I got to know that company really well, Shaun. Okay, got to know, started researching the directors and all that, and I realized that one thing that I saw is that in the winter time when they weren't drilling, that stock was between 50 to 60 cents a share. In the spring, when they started putting out their assay results, that stock would come up from around 60 cents to about 85, 90. And midsummer, when there was a bunch of things, that stock would go to about 110 to 120. Right. Okay. And I started watching it year after year after year. And it was the same pattern every year. So I'll never forget that one day I'm sitting at my desk and it was wintertime when the stock was 50 cents. And I thought I was Warren Buffett. I said, I'm going to buy 10,000 shares at 50 cents because I think in the summertime. And I went home and I told my wife, I said, listen, I think I'm going to double my money on this stock. And sure enough, I doubled my money. I think I actually sold more. Like I bought it at 50, 55, and I sold at about 110. Right. Okay. And I thought I thought I was the smartest guy in the world. Where this one friend of mine that had left the company that I work with and went to work for Wood Gundy. Now, Wood Gundy, there's a name that's also like way in the past in Toronto. It was a huge firm, right? Okay. And he would call us because even though within brokers, we used to call each other and give like stock tips and all that. And I'll never forget this guy, Paul, calls me up one day in the summer, right? And says, hey, Carlos, you should check out, you really look to look at, God, I wish I could remember the name of the company. It's going to come to me. But he goes, you got to check out the stock. Our analysts have a huge buy recommendation on it. I said, whoa, wait a minute, Paul. You guys are recommending it at $1.10? He goes, yeah. So one thing that I understood, and I don't know if your listeners know this, a brokerage firm, Shaun, can sell stocks to a client in one of two ways. As an agent, which means that they don't own the stock. So they go, let's say you want to buy Microsoft and you call your brokerage firm. If they don't own Microsoft shares, they act as an agent. They go into the market and buy it for you and charge you a fee, right? Okay. But another way that a brokerage firm sells you a stock is that's what's called a principal position. That means that firm owns that stock and they can sell it to a client. And if the stock is up, they actually make that profit. If the stock is down, they lose the money, right? Okay. Well, I knew that if anyone was smart, they would have bought that junior mining company at 50 cents in the winter, right? Okay. So the first thing I said to Paul, my friend, I said, Paul, is Wood Gundy agents or principal on this thing? He goes, let me check. Called the back office. He comes back on that. He goes, no, we have a principal position in the company. And I thought, son of a guns. They, for sure, were buying this stock in the winter at 50 cents, right? Okay. In the summertime, when the stock's at 110, 120, flogging it out to their clients with big buy recommendations from their analysts, fully knowing, Shaun, in my opinion, I can never prove it, but in my opinion, fully knowing that come wintertime, that stock was going to pull back again, right? Okay. So I left the industry because I realized when these brokerage firms are making billions and billions of dollars, I think you have to be crazy to think that they're making that kind of money on a 2% commission. There's no way. They make money because they buy principal positions when they know the stocks are low. You know what I'm saying? Right. So I thought to myself, how is the average guy ever stand a chance to make money in this market? It's just like the most corrupt thing I've ever seen in my life, right? Okay, so I left. I didn't like what I saw, and in 2000 I left. And from 2000 to 2007, me and one of the partners that left with me, the same guy that we did real estate, we started a little venture capital firm where we would raise capital for private companies and help them go public. I loved that. I really enjoyed doing that. I did that for 7-8 years. And then during those times, like I said, I always was into real estate. And then I just kind of gravitated into real estate, which is something that I kind of just like more because I'm a big believer. You know, I always tell people, if you look at we all heard the one percenters, right? The elites and all that. They have a rule that I read a book. It's called the 1/3 rule. They have never, if you look at all these families like Rockefellers, the Vanderbilts, they have never put family money into the markets. They buy 3 asset classes of what they call a third. The first asset class that they buy is raw land. Okay, and I'll tell you. So what I've tried to do in my life over the last since 2000 when I left is try to emulate what they do, except on a much smaller scale, right? So they buy. When I say they buy raw land, they're buying millions and millions of acres of raw land, right? Okay. Then when I was a broker, Shaun, there was always a saying that when the economy took a hit, the number one producing asset class, I don't know if that's now the same thing, but I remember when I was a stockbroker, the number one producing asset class was raw land when everything went to bad. You know what I mean? Okay. So the elites buy raw land and so what I do, I can't afford millions and millions of acres. But when I started going to Brazil in 2005, I started buying a plot of land here, especially if I could buy beachfront. I was buying beachfront property in Natal in 2005. So ridiculously cheap. Like it's not as cheap as it wasn't, but it's still cheap compared to anywhere in the world. So that's number one, raw land. Number two is they buy real estate. but they're buying castles, right? Okay, I can't afford a castle. So what I started in 2015, like I'm in Brazil right now because I think that's where the opportunity is. But in 2015, I think it was 2011 to 2015. I was in Detroit City. I don't know if you remember. I think it was 2012. Detroit almost went bankrupt. You remember that? Okay, so we were buying bungalows, 3-bedroom bungalows in Detroit. I'll never forget for between 20 to 30,000 US. And this is a time when a bungalow in Toronto would cost you 400,000 or 500,000, right? Okay, so for about 3 years, I did that in Detroit, where I'd buy a property for 20, 25, I'd fix it up, 7, 8 grand. So I'm in for about 35, 40. I'd hold it for a couple of months and I'd sell it for 55 to 60. So I did well in Detroit there for a while, right? Okay. I stopped. It's a longer story, but I stopped because I forget the years. I'm horrible with years. But I remember that Trump on his first term, I think, was making big promises that he wanted to bring back the car companies to Detroit and all that. And it never really happened. So things stagnated. So I left after a while. But yeah, so that's asset two. They buy real estate. Asset three is fine art and jewels. Okay. Now the same thing, fine art. I tried to figure that industry. It's really, really hard to get into it. Jewels. So I dabble a little bit in diamonds and gemstones. I'll buy certain stones. I specifically like Burmese rubies. I kind of know that sector, so I'll buy them. I'll hold them for about 5, 6, 7 months, and I'll reflip them. And I find I do well with that. So I do that one third, one third, one third rule, just on a much, much smaller scale than what the elites do.
Curious about the 1/3 rule. I don't hear, although you say fine arts and jewels, I don't hear precious metals. So I don't hear gold, silver. I don't hear Bitcoin. I mean, Bitcoin hasn't been around that long. I don't hear Bitcoin. Has your mind changed on that over time, or you stick to raw land, real estate, and fine art and jewels?
No, I think a great question. When you're talking gold and silver, in my opinion, it is first of all, I think it is included in gold and silver, but gold and silver, Shaun, gold and silver, especially gold, it's an interesting thing. I'm not independently wealthy by any means, don't get me wrong. Since 2011, because I told you, once I kind of realized that it's all just paper, like paper is valueless, right? Okay. My attitude today and the clients that I work with, our attitude in a short thing is that if we can't touch and feel what we're buying, we're not interested. Like I want to be able to touch what I'm buying. You know what I mean? Okay. And gold and silver, sir. Although, Shaun, I will preface that. A lot of times when I talk to people about do you buy gold? Oh yeah, I love gold, Carlos. And I always ask them, what do you buy? Most of them either buy gold stocks, which is okay, but a lot of them buy gold certificates, right? Okay. If I ever am on the phone with a client and he tells me that he buys gold certificates, I'll always tell him, if you got a couple of minutes, go pull out your certificate. I want to show you something. And I guarantee you, anyone that's holding a gold certificate, check it out. It's a little fine print. You go to your bank and they give you a gold certificate that you have this much gold, but the fine print says that if that institution gets into financial trouble, all you're holding is a piece of paper. You're holding nothing, right? Okay. The only thing that I buy in gold and silver is gold bullion and silver bullion, right? Okay. So since 2011, every month, if I had spare cash, I would buy either a gold bar or a silver bar. More silver because just, cheaper, so you can get more,
cost,
right? Okay.
Yes.
So here's the interesting thing about gold and silver. Oh, and I was doing that since 2011, buying. Now, if we go back about 7, 8 years ago when Bitcoin first started coming out, and then I think it was every week there was some new cryptocurrency coming out. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Okay? And I was pitched, I don't know how many crypto coins that I was pitched over the last day. I kept saying no. First of all, I didn't believe in it for the longest time, right? Okay. I said, no, I think this is just a fad. It's not going to go. Now, me saying it's a fad, I was offered Bitcoin, I'll never forget, when it was 75 cents a coin. So some fad. But anyways, my take on crypto is that I didn't believe in it. I now do. I'll come to the realization that it is a legitimate currency, for lack of a better word. But all we hear now is Bitcoin. All other coins, you don't hear much about them anymore, right? Okay. So Bitcoin has kind of, broken that glass ceiling, has become but here's the interesting thing. when I was every time I was trying to talk to clients about buying some properties in Brazil or some diamonds or just, they'd always say, why would I, like they would ask me, let me ask you something. If I buy a house in Brazil, what do you think it's going to go up in a year? I said, you're going to get about 12 to 15% on average. Oh yeah, well, I'm in this coin that I'm making 10% a month, blah, 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 blah. I said, yeah, I got you. And when I would talk about gold, I don't know if you remember, Shaun, now if we go now over to this last 6 months, gold and silver have gone nuts. But there was a 7-8 year period there that it was flat. You remember that? Right?
Well,
So,
in fairness, I don't. I want to be very. I don't remember it because I wasn't paying
okay.
attention to it. But I can pull up the charts and look at it and be like, what we're in right now is something pretty spectacular.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the Bitcoin thing. I think about it because you talk about 75 cents. I talk about 10 grand. I remember when it was 10 grand and
There
sitting
you
there
go.
and
Yeah.
watching it and being like, I don't even know what this is. I can't even figure it out. And now I
Yeah.
kick myself because I'm like, you could have been in at 10 grand. It wouldn't have been that hard.
I was offered at 75 cents. You know, those,
Yeah.
we all have what I call an if I'd have story. If I'd have done this, if
Sure,
I'd have done
sure.
that. I think, if I'm not mistaken, it was in 2000 or 2001. I had an office in Pickering, Ontario. And this buddy came to me and said, hey, new coin being launched, this thing, cryptocurrencies called Bitcoin, 75 cents a share. And I'll never forget what I said to him. I said, Dave, this is a passing fad. 6 months, this won't be here anymore.
Whoops.
Whoops, exactly. But anyways, I was laughed at for those 7-8 years that gold and silver are flat, right? You're an idiot, blah, 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 blah. And I just said, no, but I don't buy gold and silver, Shaun, in all honesty. My attitude when I buy gold and silver, that's why I said that it's kind of outside of when I said the 1/3 rule, is that I don't think most people buy gold and silver as a way to make money. It's a safe haven. It's a hedge against a downfall. You know what I mean, right? Okay.
Yes.
And in my opinion, Shaun, what we're seeing right now, I mean, silver. If we go back just to June of last year, I think it was $27 an ounce, right? Silver, a coin. It went up to 118. It pulled back down to 65. I think today it's like back at 78, 80, something like that, right? Okay. But in my opinion, and it's not me. I'm an idiot. I don't know, but there's a lot of analysts that I watch. They're pegging silver this year at probably between 130 to 150, and gold at about 6 to 6,500. I believe that's going to happen. I think what's happening, in my opinion, is the cracks in the system. What I call like I said, the whole system is just corrupt beyond belief, in my opinion. I think the cracks have started to show, and I think that people. That's why they're trying to pull silver and gold down, but they can't do it anymore. I was just watching an analyst yesterday. He goes that it doesn't matter how much these guys are trying to pull silver down. The demand for silver is off the charts. If you try to go to any of your local store to buy a gold coin, they don't have them. The supply is dwindling so bad, and most central banks of all countries, Russia, China, have been buying up all gold reserves for the last couple of years, right? Okay, so I could be wrong. But I think what we're seeing, the reason that the two metals are starting to go like crazy, is just the cracks in the paper system is starting to show, right? Okay, and even though the markets, just before I came on with you, I was talking to a client and the Dow just hit 50,000, right? So everyone's all happy. But if I had, and this will be good because this is going to be recorded. We're in February of 2026. Before the year is up, I think lots of people are going to have their heads are going to spin. What's coming with the stock market in the U.S. I don't think it's going to be pretty. So,
well, I appreciate that. Well, I guess the 1/3 rule is really interesting. We're all land, real estate, fine arts, and jewels.
yeah.
And then you're like, but I've been buying precious metals for a while. And when you talk about it, I'm the same belief, right? I want to feel it. I don't want some piece of paper saying, "Oh, you own." It's like, has anybody been paying attention to the world lately and everything going on? It's like, I want to feel the thing. I don't want to go, oh, yeah, I think I own some. I got a piece of paper that says I own it. That means, well, it's about as good as toilet paper most days with the governments of the world right now, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And let me just tell you, Shaun, let me tell you something, because I remember certain debates that I had with clients, which are interesting. So I had another client that liked gold as well, right? Okay. And when gold was flat, especially gold, I remember it was sitting at between $15,000 to $2,000 an ounce for years, right? Okay. And when we were talking about gold one day, he goes, "Yeah, I like gold as well." He goes, "What do you buy?" I say, "I buy gold bullion." He goes, "Oh, you're an idiot. I buy gold coins." I say, "Well, I don't like coins because when you buy a piece of gold bullion, you know what it's the spot price of gold. You know what you're buying at, and you know if you want to sell it, what it's worth, right?" Okay. Well, he goes, "Yeah, but let me tell you something. I have some gold coins that I bought when gold was like 1,100 an ounce. So the gold value stayed flat for 4 or 5 years." He goes, "But some of the coins, the collectible value had gone from 1,000 to 10,000." So he was bragging. I said, "I get it, but I don't want to be involved in collectible value because collectible value is, again, it's just something that's in the air. You know what I'm saying? Right? Okay. So he made lots of money while I sat on my gold for years and years flat. This guy made good money because he knew what kind of coins to like. And it is true, apparently. Some of these collectible coins go up. For me, I just don't want to be involved in that. I buy the gold bullion. So just to make sure that we understand, when I say the one third, one third, one third, I think even with the large families, gold and silver have always been there as well. It's just that the gold and silver is more of a hedge rather than something to try to. But all of them, Shaun, at the end of the day, have one thing in common. You can touch raw land, you can touch houses, and you can touch diamonds and art. It's all things you can touch and feel, right? Okay. And I think that is in my opinion, Shaun, I always say because I do believe that there's some nasty stuff coming out. Like I said, I think that the cracks started over the last couple of years. And I think people are waking up to that it's such a manipulated system, this system. And I don't like, I'm going to say this just in general. I think the people that are going to survive are people hanging on to hard assets, in my opinion. Right?
When it comes to, okay, when I go back through your story and you talk about, I started to buy 3-bedroom bungalows, right? You started in Toronto. And then, you went from 3 to 15 and then, but then your story jumps and now you're in, forgive me, you rattled off a bunch of different places. You talked about, wanting to be beachfront, which I think the audience can make sense. And then you look around, I don't know, Canada, and you look at beachfront and you go, I can't afford that. So I go, when did you make the jump to different countries? To different countries, not to Brazil, just in general, different countries.
I've always, Shaun, I've always I believe, I'm a broker, right? I'm a stock. So we had that mentality. A broker's mentality is don't put all your eggs in one basket, right? Okay. And most people that when they say don't put all your eggs in one basket, what they mean is have some bonds, have some stocks, have some high tech. That's true, right? I just, because I was a broker, I understood a lot more that not only a diversity of segments, but I've always thought that you have to diversify outside of countries because one country might be doing bad while another one's doing good, right? Okay. And so like I said, for 35 years ago, I went to Panama, I invested in Panama early on. I did okay there. Costa Rica did okay there. I went to St. Kitts, did okay there. So I've always liked going to other countries, right? Okay. But then, like I said, I came to Brazil because of a tenant of mine. That's how I got to Brazil. And then Brazil, I really like, I did a lot more in Brazil than I did in any of the other countries. And still doing.
I'm curious how, I assume there was a learning curve to, instead of just investing in Canada, right? You're living in Canada. Oh, maybe I could just go invest in wherever, Alberta, Manitoba, the East Coast, instead of going there, you go, you mentioned Panama, Costa Rica, Brazil. Was there a learning curve there to like, hey, I'm going to buy a place on the other side of the world? I mean, relative.
I don't know. I don't know if it was Shaun. It was a simple concept for me. So, sorry, and I can tell you, Florida. I did a lot in Florida. Okay, and actually, Florida was probably the first place that I started going to, only because of the fact that if we talk about buying beachfront in Canada, well, where are you going to buy beachfront in Canada for 3 months out of the year? You know what I'm saying, right? Okay, and when I started looking at snowbirds, you know what that is, right? Snowbirds, the way people.
Yes, I live in the Great North, where there are snowbirds all the time.
Yeah.
Yes,
So
both figuratively and yes.
Yeah, listen, I can't remember the years. I wish I could remember. I'm 61. I'm getting old. But I remember that there was 4 or 5 guys that we've always used to do things together. And we took a trip down to Fort Lauderdale, right? Fort Lauderdale and to Daytona Beach, especially Daytona Beach. And I'll never forget. I saw I think the name of the place was called Marco Polo. That was the name of the condo. It was one of these hotel condos where it's a hotel, but you can buy a unit in it, right? Okay. And I'm telling you, this is got to be 2005, 2006, around there, something like that. A unit there was $100,000 US on the ocean, right? Okay. So when you say learning curve, I don't know if it was, I think it was just a thing that when I looked at that, and I thought to myself, in Harbourfront, which is Toronto, like that's where the lake is, right? At that time, a condo on the ocean, on the lake there, you're talking 500,000-600,000 in Toronto at that time, and I can buy one in Daytona Beach for 100,000. That's summer year round. You know what I'm saying, right? Okay. So we started. This guy Derek, Terrence. We got together this little group and started putting money together and buying. So we bought one unit there, right? Okay. It was rented it out for about, I think it was 8-9 months, and then resold it. So I just always thought to myself, beachfront is a good, like, people, I think inherently, I think everyone has
You
a
want to
dream
be
of
by the
owning.
water. You
Yeah,
want to be by the water. You do.
exactly, right? I think it's an innate, and everyone I think has a dream to own a beachfront property. But in Canada, it just never made sense to me, right? It just never made sense to me. It makes more sense to be in a place that is year-round summer, right? So that's why, and so that was the only learning curve. So I went from Florida, and then just thought, okay, well, if we can buy beachfront, and if I would have known better, I would have kept all that beachfront property till today. Still would have made a fortune. But again, it's my broker mentality. If I buy something for $1 and it doubles, don't sell, right? That's
So
just the
then
mentality.
walk me through Brazil then. Why do you settle on Brazil? You mentioned Panama, you mentioned Costa Rica, you mentioned all over the US, right? You
Right.
could have settled in Florida for Pete's sake, right? There's a
Yeah.
ton of reason to go there. Lots of people have.
God.
You mentioned, I think you mentioned Texas as well, and a lot of people have gone there too.
No, I've never gone to Texas, but I know lots of people are going. So I'll give you the short story why Brazil. Then I'll expand if you want. So that unit that I told you on the ocean, right? It's a like a hotel suite, right? Okay, about, like, I'd say about 400 square feet. That was 100,000, and that had to be 2005, 2006. Okay, last year I bought on in Brazil, and you're talking, the city that I'm in is called Natal. I stutter a little bit, Shaun, so if I do, I apologize. Within a 5-minute drive of where I live, we have 7 of the most gorgeous beaches you've ever seen in your life. Okay, and Natal. When people ask me what's the weather like there, there's only one weather in the city: 35, sunny and hot. There's nothing else, right? Okay, so and last year, this was the 2005. I could buy that one in Florida for 100 grand. I would assume that today in 2026 that that's probably close to 700,000-800,000. Well, I bought a unit last year, 450 square feet, across the street from one of the most beautiful beaches you've ever seen. Okay, it looks like something out of Greece, like it's one of those white buildings, look really nice. I bought it for 170,000 reais. That is 38,000 US. I challenge anybody. I tell anybody, Brazil, and I've done my research on buying property. Brazil, what's happening in this country when it comes to real estate, and especially in Natal, because if you go to Sao Paulo and Rio, the 2 big cities, it's still cheap compared to North America, but it's nowhere as cheap compared to Natal. There's something, and I know what it is. It will take me forever to explain it, but I think that there's about 5 to 7 years for any North American who wants to invest in real estate, that there's no better place than what's going on in Brazil right now. No better place.
So give me the long story of Brazil then.
Okay, so when I first came in 2003, when I came for a couple of weeks, I looked at Natal, I looked at Fortaleza, looked at Recife, but I liked Natal because I saw that Natal was way underdeveloped compared to the other 2 cities. So I always like to buy things when they're low, right? Okay. And I don't know, again, you're not going to remember, in 2005, most of countries like Brazil were classified as third world countries, right? Okay. But then in 2000, I don't know if it was 2005, around that time, the IMF first coined the phrase BRICS: Brazil, Russia, India, China, right? Okay. And they came out with a white paper that I had read at the time that said that they believed that by 2050, the BRIC nations were going to be the power, like all the power would shift from the North American nations to these BRIC nations. Okay. Well, I've been here now for close to 20 years, and now for like since in 2019 full time. And it is absolutely clear, plain to see that that is the case. The Brazil, Shaun, is self-reliant. Like it's interesting. All this stuff that's going on in the world, Brazil seems to be outside of all this stuff. It's a self-reliant country. Well, I'll give you the best example I could think of. In Toronto, we have a couple of big stars. Justin Bieber was from there. Shania Twain was from there. But all of them, to become successful, they had to go to the States. They would never be successful in Canada, right? Where it's just a small little country. Well, I learned in 2007, 2008, there was a couple of artists in Brazil. The best one I can think of is this lady called Ivete Gonzalez. She's bigger than Beyonce, bigger than any of these guys. She's never been to the US. They can do everything within their own country. They don't need to go anywhere else. You know what I mean? Okay. And Brazilians, it's an interesting thing. Why I think Brazil is such an interesting country is it's been growing for the last 10 years, steady growth. It's phenomenal. Okay. And Brazilians are they're spenders. There's a joke in Brazil that if a Brazilian makes 2,000 reais a month, he spends 10. So they're just people. If I over the last couple of years, I have lots of clients. Some of them want real estate. Others of them want to expand their companies. I've helped about 3 or 4 clients expand their companies to Brazil. And Brazil is an interesting country when it comes to business. Hard to crack. There's a lot of bureaucracy to get your business in here. But if you can crack the bureaucracy, it's an amazing. I met this one guy that had a supplement company. I think this was back in 2010, 2011. And the guy was just making a fortune. And I asked him, how hard was it? He goes, Carlos, let me tell you something. It took me about 8-9 years to really get established here. It was ridiculously hard. But he goes, most people, if you talk about what countries would be good to have a business, they would think India, China, because big populations, right? He goes, Brazil, if you can crack it, is better than any of those nations because of, I'll forget what he said. Indians and Chinese, yes, it's big populations, but they're kind of have a little bit of a North American mentality. They're savers. They like to save. Brazilians, no, they'll spend. They spend like nobody's business, right? So it's a really good country for that. And over the last, like I said, over the last 10 years, you can clearly see. And now, what started with the BRIC, it was originally BRIC, Brazil, Russia, India, China, the 4 countries. That was, I think, in 2005, 2006. And then they expanded it to BRICS, which they had South Africa, right? Okay. But if you look over the last 2-3 years, Shaun, there's about 17, 18 nations now that are part of the BRIC nations, right? Okay. And I don't know if you remember, there was a big fight a couple of years ago where it was Putin that actually started this. He said that the BRIC nations are going to start using their own currencies to do international trade. Oh, this is important. Let me bring this up again from my broker days. What I've always understood, the only reason, in my opinion, that the U.S. still stands today is for 2 reasons. Because the U.S. dollar is the trade currency of the world, okay? And if you ever you find these out when you're doing, in Toronto, I'm sure it's the same in Alberta. There's a lot of immigrants, especially from India, that come to Toronto. They work, and every month they send money back to their family in India, right? Okay. If you ever do a wire transfer from your bank account in Toronto to any other country, you'll notice that your transfer does not go from Toronto directly to India. It goes from Toronto to what's called an intermediary bank normally in New York City, 90% of the times out in New York City. And then from New York City, it goes to its final place. Well, that intermediary bank takes a little fraction, pennies and pennies. But when you're talking billions and billions of dollars trading on a daily basis, U.S. makes a lot of money from that, right? Okay. And secondly, the fact that the U.S. dollar is a trade currency. Any country that wants to buy gold or silver or any oil has to first buy U.S. dollars to buy what they want to buy. And I remember, again, I'm horrible with years, Shaun, I apologize, but a couple of years ago, I remember the Fed chair coming out with a big warning saying that if the U.S. ever loses that status, it's serious trouble for the U.S. And when I say cracks in the system, I think that's what I'm talking about. Trump has been, fighting between Putin. I remember, I don't know if you remember, there was a time where Trump said, if the BRICS think they're going to do that, we're going to tariff them to death. But Putin came out and said, you can do what you want. And not only did he say we're going to keep doing it, they are doing it. Putin, Russia, developed its own SWIFT. That's what SWIFT is called, the SWIFT system, right? The transfer system. Russia developed its own SWIFT system that since, I think just after COVID, a lot of BRIC nations, when they're transferring money, are going outside of the US system and using that Russian SWIFT system. And a lot of these BRIC nations right now are trading within their own currencies. This is not good for the US. Believe me, like this.
Forgive me if I'm wrong, Carlos, but after they seized all the Russian assets and booted them from SWIFT, everybody thought, oh, they're going to be done. And instead, that has not been the case whatsoever. It's it's had the Streisand effect. It's had a greater or even, like a greater impact,
Absolutely.
the opposite way of what they hoped it would do. Now, I didn't realize this. You said the IMF coined BRIC back in 2005, 2006.
I could be wrong on the years, but it was I think it was.
But it was the IMF that did that.
Yeah, they coined that phrase, BRIC.
And so the IMF realized 20 years ago, roughly, give or take the year, that the BRIC nations were going to take over.
Absolutely. Yeah, they realized that. But they said here's the interesting thing, Shaun. They said by 2050. We're in 2026. I think before 2030, their prediction what was going to happen, I think will come to pass already. I don't think it's going to take till 2050. Being here, I can see that.
If you want to understand something, watch the money. Is probably one of the easiest thing to do. I think I'm learning. Money. Yeah, I think I'm learning that more and more as the days go by. And the International Monetary Fund, that is I think the big one of the world, correct? The IMF, was saying 20 years ago, you just watch, the BRIC nations are going to have, and you're saying roughly at the same time, Brazil is a third world nation.
Well, they did classify it as a third world nation. I forget, there was one, it started to go really cool. Brazil went really nuts from 2005 to 2008. Okay. A lot of foreigners were coming here and investing big time, like billions and billions, because one of the major banks, and I can't remember the name, reclassified them as not third world anymore. Right.
Well, and Carlos, if the IMF is saying these guys are on the rise, you think they're not swinging a little, you talk about being basically a little fish in a big pond. They're the big fish, and they're going, that country is going to go places in the next 45 years. Yeah. Of course, people are going to flood there.
Yeah, Shaun, I have an article. I can email it to you once we're done. And this article is from, I think, also 2005, 2006. It's titled "All the Big Boys Are Investing in Brazil." It was Sam Zell, who's a big real estate guy in the States. Okay, Bill Gates. All of them were buying land and property in Brazil in 2005 to 2008. Massive, not little, I buy a piece of 1,000 square meter beachfront land. These guys were buying major. Bill Clinton all of them were buying already in 2005,
so
if I'm not mistaken.
The great human beings of this planet were buying there. Great, right?
Absolutely.
Great, right? You're going to have beachfront, and down the road is going to be Clinton and Gates. Yeah, I can think of,
and don't forget, buying beachfront property at the same time telling all of us, global warming, the oceans are going to rise
and everything else, right? How ridiculous. Anyway,
it's what I said. It's the corruption in the system. It's the average Joe. I can spend here the next 10 hours talking about how the average. To me, it's horrible. The average person does not stand a chance in this system. It's not made for you to prosper. It was made of. I think what happened, in my opinion. I think that Canada, especially like the U.S., still a little. It's going downhill, but Canada, our country, unfortunately, I think it's gone. In my opinion, there's no more salvation for Canada. It was a beautiful country up until about 20 years ago, and then the downslide has just been ridiculous. Just ridiculous, in my opinion.
I was just going to say the average Joe doesn't stand a chance, but conversations like this, where I'm listening, I'm like, well, you can do whatever you want with Carlos. You can take his thoughts or leave them, whatever. But more and more of these conversations are seeing the light of day, which Absolutely. I think does give the average Joe a chance. They just have to act on the information they're getting. And that doesn't mean they have to, race down to Brazil and buy something. I mean, just, in the time we've talked, the 1/3 rule, I've heard this before, but I don't know if I've ever heard it said so succinctly. Like they're the three. Oh, and wait, you could own precious metal. And it's like, there's all these different things. Now,
Yeah.
when you talk about Canada, curious, right? You mentioned at 5 years old, you moved to Toronto. You spent all your life there. Now you've been gone since 2019. I can see the timing of maybe not why you came back. I won't interpret that, but if you want to talk about it, give her. You're staring back at Canada now. I'm curious.
Yeah.
You go, Canada's
Yeah.
gone.
Yeah.
And there's a huge roaring debate right now where different premiers, I'm going to point out EB, calls Albertans traitors for wanting a independence referendum in their province, right? Because they're seeing a ton of Albertans, along with a ton of Canadians, might add, are seeing this decline of Canada and going, what is going on?
Absolutely.
You're sitting in Brazil. What do you see from there when you look back at Canada?
I see exactly, Shaun. Even when it's interesting. When I was a stockbroker, I'm in Toronto, right? I'm a broker in Toronto.
Yes.
And I never planned this, okay? But your province, not because I'm on your podcast, but Alberta is the best province of Canada, in my opinion. The mindset of the average Albertan, you guys are more, I think you guys are more Americanized than the rest of Canada. You know what I mean? I don't know if that's a proper word, Americanized, but like more entrepreneurial styles. I was a broker in Toronto. 90% of my clients were from Alberta. And not because I try, like I would call Ontarians, but Ontarians were always such, like, I don't know, they're very ultra conservative, while the Albertans were a little bit more business minded. You know what I'm saying? Right? So in my opinion, when I see that, the best thing you guys could do is secede from Canada, in my opinion. Because I don't like I said, like I don't mind going anywhere. You know, if you want me to go, some people might not like some of my views. I'll tell you something right now. I'm extreme right wing. Extreme. I find Donald Trump too left for me. So. I don't go back to Canada because I find the country, especially Ontario, the province that I'm from, is ridiculously socialistic. I would socialistic. I'm being kind when I say that. I think they're bordering on communism, in my opinion. Right? Okay, and I don't see how anyone can ever prosper and survive in a kind of system like that. It's just not good. Right?
Yeah. Okay, then walk me back through Brazil. You mentioned it's clear to see how self-reliant they are. And it's just, I assume you land and you're like, something is different here. Now, you've been there for a few years.
Yeah.
So what is different about Brazil? Because just before you answer,
okay.
I've been saying this, I feel like I've been saying this a lot lately, is the way North American media frames BRIC countries specifically is a certain way. And then when I sit down and I chat with people who've been to BRIC nations, I'm like, something doesn't add up here.
Yeah.
Because they're painting a different picture. It's almost inverse to what I'm told BRIC nations are.
Absolutely.
So walk me through Brazil.
Okay. Let me, that's a fantastic question, but let me tell you something first. I think, Shaun, there's such, like the world is so, like there's such misinformation that sometimes it's mind boggling. I'll give you an example of what I mean. I've talked to, you'll ask a guy, oh, where'd you go? I went to Thailand. Hey, man, it's dangerous. Like I did. And there's a couple of YouTube guys that I watch that I like that they travel, these vloggers that travel the world, right? And this one guy, Kurt Katz, I've never heard of him. You ever heard of him? Kurt Katz? Anyways,
nope.
he specifically, he went to Colombia and he gets in the cab and he goes, he goes, oh, my subscribers say that this is the most dangerous part of the city. You can't go there. You'll get killed. Take me there. He goes there and he's walking around. Everyone's friendly, waving hi. And there's a lot of misinformation about that, right? Okay. So much so that when I first came to Brazil in 2003, Shaun, I swear to you, I'm not kidding. A friend of mine who was a very good friend of mine came into my office and goes, Carlos, I heard you're planning to take a trip to Brazil. I said, yeah. He goes, be careful, buddy. I said, what do you mean? Don't wear any rings. Don't wear any, they will chop your hand off. This is exactly, they will chop your hand off to get your ring. I said, seriously? So I did. I remember we landed in Sao Paulo. We were going to stay about 4 days in Sao Paulo. And I told my friend Alvaro, I said, let's go down to the center of the city at 1 o'clock in the morning. I wanted to see. And I just did my own little research. When you say, when you said to me, what was the learning curve? I just always like to research for myself. You know what I mean? Right. So I started talking to a couple of vendors on the street and all that. I said, is it really dangerous here? And the stories I was hearing was not that, oh yeah, well, there was a fight here a couple of weeks ago. I said, I'm not talking about a fight. I'm talking about, like, is it dangerous? Oh, I've been living here 20. So what you're experiencing in real life compared to what you're told, you know what I mean? Right. Okay. And that's not just Brazil, John.
No, that's Canada. It's everywhere. I
It's
can walk out.
everywhere, right?
I can walk out my front door and go talk to the neighbor, and it'd be completely fine.
Yeah.
But I'm not a
Okay.
moron. You see the trends of the
You see the
homelessness,
trend.
the drug use, the dangers of the road. You just the cost of living, the cost of going to get groceries. You also see that too.
Exactly. But Sean, here's the thing. The tables have turned 180 degrees because what the Canadians used to say that, oh man, dangerous, dangerous. I'll tell you right now that in Natal, and I live here now 7 years straight, I feel a million times safer in Natal than I ever would in any neighborhood in Toronto.
Well, did you see the recent story that broke on Toronto?
No.
They've been having these tow truck wars. I don't know.
Oh, right.
7 cops got charged, and it goes as high as like helping hitmen trying to give them information. And I'm probably butchering it a little bit, folks. You should go look up the story. But
Yeah.
like 7 cops are being charged now. Like
Yeah.
when you talk about Toronto being dangerous, yeah. And you got
It's
Surrey,
dangerous.
Surrey, BC, that is wants the mayor's wants a state of emergency. They've had 36
Absolutely.
extortion cases or 36 attempts of extortion this year. We're not
It's
even
bad.
36 days into the year.
It's bad. It's bad. Sean, I have, like I said, there's certain things that when I say like just, I do my research as much as I can. And, you can't watch anyone, the average person, here's the problem with the average person. Like, although they are waking up, right? But in my opinion, they're waking up a little bit too slow because I think that things are happening so quick. But the average guy, what's he do? He goes to work, he gets up in the morning, he goes to work, he comes home, he wants to have dinner, and he turns on the TV and he turns on either CNN. And unfortunately, and if you're watching CNN, I'll even say Fox News is a little bit better, but if you're watching CNN, Channel 24, all you're getting is lies. Just in my opinion, all lies. You know what I mean? Right? So if you lost me because I saw a little thing on the phone, have you? No. So why was I saying that?
Well, I can safely say this audience isn't watching CNN. If they are, it's
There
to
you go.
tune in and
Okay.
have a laugh.
So here's what I wanted to say, Sean. I have no way of proving this, but I think I'm right. Toronto, okay, over the last 7, 8 years, and it was a really good friend of mine that worked for the Transit Commission, says that on a weekly basis, between 3 to 5 people are pushed onto the train tracks. It doesn't get into the news. They actively keep those stories out of the news. Toronto is a dangerous, dangerous city at this point in time. Dangerous city. And my kids live there. So I always tell my son, when you're on the subway, keep your back to the wall. You know what I mean? So the interesting thing is we've come full circle. Where they used to say, my God, don't go to Brazil, they'll chop off your hands. That's almost truer now in Toronto than it is here. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's a crazy situation. It's a crazy situation. But yeah, so I'll let you ask the question. We'll go where you want to go.
Well, I'm going to go back to Brazil. Well, you mentioned that it's clear to see. It's self-reliant. It's like,
Yeah.
I don't know. You've been living there now. It's going on 7 years or maybe
7
over
years,
7 years.
Yeah. Since
I'm,
2019.
I guess I just like, so what is it about Natal?
Okay, so what's like I said, if you told me, Carlos, I'm interested in Brazil, I have a company, I want to expand my product into Brazil, I would not say come to Natal. I'd say go to São Paulo, Rio. Those are the three. Like, São Paulo is 45 million people. It's the size of Canada, right? Okay, Natal, the city that I'm in, it's about 900,000 people. It's a small little city, right? Okay, but there's something about Natal that the prices. Well, it's two things. The price, Sean. Like, I think I told you last year. I'll give you that story because it's important. Even though I live here, my mind is still there. I watch Canadian news. I watch North America. I don't really track Brazilian news, right? Okay, and I think I told you this when we were on the phone the last time. This was about just after COVID, just after lockdowns. I saw a story And the story was geared to Detroit City. It said that once the lockdowns were lifted in Detroit, about 75% of the businesses, because every city's like that. You got the office buildings, but the main floor is always like either a coffee. It's all retail, right? Okay, and 75% of the businesses in Detroit never went back. They went belly up. Okay, so the article went on to say that office spaces were like 50% empty, and the office buildings, the prices were coming down like 45-50%. Right? Okay, so I see a story like that. The first thing I do, because like I said, my mindset is still Toronto. I've been in Toronto 50 odd years, right? Okay. I called an agent, a real estate agent that I knew in Toronto. I said, Joyce, is the same thing, like find out if the same thing happened in Toronto after the lockdowns. And it did. Not to the extent that it happened in Detroit. Like I said, 75% of the businesses didn't come back and the prices went down about 50%. Right? Okay. In Toronto, the estimates, I think, were about 35% of the businesses never came back. And office buildings came down about 35% as well, right? So once I knew that, then I called an agent here in Natal and I said, I want you to take me to the downtown core of the business sector and I want to see what happened there. And sure enough, Shaun, I found that it was almost as bad as Detroit. An office suite, you got an office building and you can buy individuals. I bought originally one back just after the lockdowns were there. It's 25 square meters, which is 250 square feet. Okay. I bought this thing for 50,000 reais. You're talking $9,500 US dollars for an office suite. Okay. I joke around with some of my friends in Toronto. I was on the phone with a guy a couple of days ago because I've now bought four. I own four of these things now, right? Okay. And I said, what would you pay for an office suite, 250 square feet in Toronto? He goes, well, it's got to be at least 400,000 or 500,000. What if I told you I could buy for 10 grand? He goes, no, impossible. And I showed him. He couldn't believe it. But what happened is, because that after they lifted, because they had the lockdowns there for about 8 months as well. When they lifted it, when I went and saw it, that downtown core was destroyed, like everything boarded up and all that. But those units, the one that I bought for 50,000 prior to COVID was selling for about 130 to 150, right? So when I saw, okay, I can pick it up for, less than half the price, and I could slowly see, like I went, when you ask me to learn, my attitude is I like to do my own research. I went down there with the agent on a weekday, but before I bought it, I told my wife, let's go there on the weekend because they have lots of shops, right? And when I went there on the weekend, I saw that it was, I wouldn't say hustle and bustle, but there was still traffic there. You know what I mean? And I went to a lot of the shop owners, about 10 of them, and said, what are you guys seeing here? Is it, well, slowly, we're starting to see the growth, right? So I thought, okay. So I bought my first one about 3 years ago. Bought a second one on a tax auction, which is bigger, about double the size, about 500 square feet. I paid 60,000 reais, which is about 11,000. And now last year in December, I just bought a third one. When I say four, because my wife bought one right next to one that I have. So I let her buy one for herself. But these things, so Shaun, I'll give you the numbers. 50,000 reais, 10,000 US. I rent that thing out for 1,100 reais a month. I pay 100 reais to the agent to manage it for me, the company, the real estate company. So leaves me with 1,000, and the maintenance fee is 300. So I net 700, right? Okay. So if you do the math, 700 times 12, you're talking 8,400 reais a year on something that costs 50 grand. You're talking about 12-13%, right? Am I right on my math there, around there? Yeah. I don't know about Alberta, but you can't get that in Toronto. Like in Toronto, if you're a landlord, you're lucky if you're eking out 3-4% a year. You know what I'm saying, right? And that unit that I bought for 50,000, that first one last year, at an offer of 70. I said, absolutely not. I'll sell that unit this year, towards the end of this year, I think for 85 to 90, because I can clearly see now that downtown core. I own 3 now. It's starting to come up. But when you say Brazil, it's still like of all the places in the world for real estate, there's something unique about Natal because it is literally impossible to find. So I have a client of mine that started buying a couple of things with me here, and he's from Waterloo. And about a year and a half ago, he calls me up. He says, Carlos, what am I in with you there? I said, Martin, you got to be in for about $60,000-$70,000 now. He goes, okay, my wife and I sold the property that we have in Waterloo. We want to come down, like we're thinking of getting bigger into Brazil, but we actually want to see it if we're going to do it. I said, oh, come on down. Unfortunately, they have a family business, so only him and the son came down, right? Okay. The wife had to stay behind. But they were here for 10 days, loved what he saw, opened up a company. He's now invested about 250,000 Canadian. But me and him, so I'll give you this. This was October of 2024. We bought a beachfront home. It's literally, again, not on the ocean, but across the street from the ocean. Okay, 5-bedroom, beautiful veranda on the top overlooking. You can see the ocean. About 4,500 square feet. Okay, and our plan was to buy it and rent it out on Airbnb. Right. Okay, we bought that house, Shaun, for 400,000 reais, which is about 90,000 US. Okay, and when you ask me why Brazil, I know I still keep my feelers out on these countries. There's no country in the world. I challenge anybody. There's no country in the world where you can buy a beachfront house for $90,000. It doesn't exist anywhere. This is only unique to Natal, right? And there's a couple more factors why that is. I think as any investor that wants to invest overseas, one thing that you have to keep conscious of is the exchange rates, because that changes all the time, right? Okay. And what happened in Brazil right now, if I do my math, 20 years that I've been coming to Brazil from 2003, actually more than 20 years, but let's say 20 years. Obviously, the exchange rate changes back and forth, but on average, I would have to say that one Canadian dollar was 2.30, 2 reais and 30 cents. That was the norm. So let's say almost 1 for 2, right? Okay. Post-COVID, one Canadian dollar has been since COVID 4.50. One American dollar is almost 6 reais. So you're getting such a bang on your dollar, it's unbelievable. And I know 100% that is not going to last. I have on my phone, I have that app, which is like the currency converter. And my iPhone says, you're addicted. Like I check that thing 15 times a day. And every time the real starts to go up, I start to sweat because I like the real. Like I'd love to see the real be like 1 Canadian dollar be 10 reais. For me, that would be amazing. You know what I mean? Right. But I think this 1 to 4, I think that's a gift that we've had. And it's not going to be like that forever. Like that real is going to start to go up in value. So I tell a lot of my clients, if you want to invest in Brazil right now, North American, 3 things. You're buying stuff ridiculously cheap that you can't get any kind of you're getting, if you want to rent, you're getting that house, by the way, Shaun. So I'll give you the number. So we bought that house for 400,000 reais. We rented it. We bought it in October of 2024. So we started renting it out in November because we did a 1 month of little renovations, right? Okay. From November 2024 to November of last year, we grossed income on that thing was 57,000 reais. We netted about 37,000. So that's still a little bit under 10%, right? Okay. But that was last year. I can tell already this year because we're into already February and the Carnival coming up next week, which is just, we rented that house for 5 days, 20,000 reais, which in Canadian dollars is about $5,000, right? For 5 days, right? This year, we'll gross in that house, in my opinion, between 85 to 90,000, and will net about 55 to 60, which will be over 10%. But what we bought for 400,000, same thing. I have agents bugging me that they'll buy it from us for 550. And I call my buddy. I said, do you want it? He goes, that house in less than 2 years, we'll sell it for close to 850, 900, right? So you got that. So you got the really cheap. The dollar, you're getting such a bang on the dollar, okay? And rental income. So that house is generating us, last year generated about 10%. This year will generate about, I'd say about 15. My wife and I have one that we've had for about 5-6 years that generates us 25% a year rental income. Undoable in Ontario. I don't know about Alberta, but I'm telling you, absolutely undoable in Ontario. It does not exist, these kind of returns, right? Okay. So I tell clients, if you're going to put 100,000 in Brazil today, 3 things are going to happen. You're going to buy a piece of property that's going to increase in value, in my opinion, 10 to 15% every year. If you rent it, you're going to get about 10 to 15% on it. And when you sell it, if I'm right, if you buy it when the dollar is 1 to 4, and when you sell it, it goes back to the norm that was 20 years, 1 to 2, you're going to make a killing just on the currency conversion when you take your money back. You know what I'm saying? Right? So that's why Brazil, because it's like the dynamics of what's happening in the country just seem, and that's why, so I'm here. I'm not looking anywhere else anymore. I have post-COVID, Shaun, I have, and I bought it with what I decided to do. Sometimes I think a little bit weird. It's straight. It's crazy. Like I said, I'm not independently wealthy. So after COVID, when the lockdown started, stopped and ended, I'm sitting here. My wife says, "So what do you plan to do?" I said, "Look, I had one condo in downtown. So I had two. Sorry, one I lived in and one that I rented out." And I said, "I'd like to buy stuff, but I don't have any money. I'd have to sell." So I was talking to a buddy of mine in Toronto. I said, "Look, Dave, this condo I had real estate. We have Remax here, right? So I had Remax go out. They appraised the condo at 365,000 reais, right? So I said to this guy, said, I want to keep 50%. I don't want to sell it, right? But I don't. But if I'm going to sell, I'd sell part of it. I'll sell 50% of it, and I'll keep 50%. So my thought was that I'd sell 50% to clients, either one guy at 50% or like five guys at 10%, right? Okay. So did the math. 365,000 every 10% was within 36,000 reais, which is about like I think around like 7,000 US or something like that, right? Okay. I sold 50% of that thing out in less than 2 weeks. And I remember telling my wife, I think I can find some clients that would probably, it might take me 6, 7 months, but they loved it, right? So so what I did, Shaun, think about it. I took out about 160,000, right? I sold half of it, right? And then, so now I only own 50%. That 150,000 that I took out, I bought a unit, not on the beach or anything, but I paid 100,000 reais for this unit, rented it out on Airbnb, and I didn't need to renovate it or anything. It was all fine. But bought it for 100,000, rented it out on Airbnb for about 8, 9 months, and sold it 9 months later for 165. Right? Okay. So now I own in Natal about 8, 9 units, but I own 50%, and clients of mine that we do these little joint ventures together own the other. Well, I shouldn't say that. I have two properties that are sold.
If I simplified it on this end, you're just saying the opportunity is just, it's just glaringly obvious.
Yeah. Every client that comes down when they leave on the plane, they say, we understand what you're saying. You can see it. It's clear to see.
Question for you, because you've been living there when some of this has gone down. Bolsonaro, right? Like one of the things that, Americans see, North Americans see, is they saw Bolsonaro and they saw like election. I don't know. You can walk. You're sitting there. Was it as bad as what?
Hang on, Shaun. I'm gonna have to. Hang on. I should have done this on my phone. Hang on. Can you hear me?
No.
Yeah. Hang on for a second. Until this. Oh, here we go. Can you hear me?
Try again.
Yeah,
you're back now.
Right?
Yep.
Okay.
So Bolsonaro.
I know what you're asking.
Yes.
So let me tell you something. Carbon copy. Do you remember when Trump? I think it was 2016 when Trump was running against Hillary. You'd see a Trump rally, thousands and thousands of people. Hillary rally, you're lucky if you get 200-300 people.
Yes.
Well, sorry, I shouldn't say that. At the time, Trump did win. Let's go back to Joe Biden. Same thing, right? Trump, thousands of people. Joe Biden, couple of hundred. Joe Biden wins, right? Okay. And Shaun, again, my opinion, I know that election was stolen. Donald Trump never lost that election. That election was stolen. And the exact same thing with Bolsonaro. When Bolsonaro came, he came to Natal a couple of times. It was thousands of people. Lula, you're lucky if you can pack 40, 50 people out of Lula rally. Lula won. These elections were stolen. And what they did with Bolsonaro is such a carbon copy. The January 6th thing with Trump is exactly what they're put Bolsonaro in jail. The poor guy's still house arrest. Like this is all part of what I'm saying, that in my opinion, Shaun, the North American empire, if we want to call it, it's seen its last days. Every empire falls, right? The Roman Empire fell, the Greek Empire fell, and the North American empire is falling. That's my personal opinion. And this is part of the reason that I don't want to go back anywhere. There's nothing, I have my kids there and I'm trying to bug them to come here, but they have their lives there, but there's nothing for me there.
When you talk about Brazil though, and that there's carbon copy, what are your, you live there, you're watching this play out and you're like, well, this just happened in the States. Doesn't that make you a bit nervous of the direction
No,
Brazil's heading?
no. So here's what's interesting. I love the questions because so we have Lula's absolutely left wing government, right? Okay, but it doesn't affect the data. That's what I'm saying. Like Brazil whereas in Canada, when it's a leftist government, like when Trudeau was in power and now Carney, which Carney, I don't want to go there.
Oh, please do. Please do. But regardless, let's stick on Brazil for a second.
You can feel the oppression when you're there. Like I told you, Shaun, I'm not exaggerating by any means, between 5 to 7 calls a week from friends, colleagues, clients, like sometimes crying, saying, we don't know what to do anymore. Like businesses are shutting down left and right, right? Okay. So in Brazil, it's an interesting thing because he's a leftist government, but Brazil is a million times more democratic than Canada is. Like so, so I don't want. I'm going to say it because so I always find the positive when Lula. So Shaun, I'll give you an example. In 2015 till 2018, Bolsonaro got in 2018, but 2015, Lula was the president at that time, right? Okay. And buddies of mine came to me and said, Carlos, there's this thing called Casa Populares. It's the government had a program called Minha Casa Minha Vida, My House, My Life, right? What they did, Canada did the same thing many years ago. They would allow, if it was a first-time Brazilian home buyer, okay, the government would finance 100% of that person's home, right? Okay. So a lot of builders were building houses, like, 500-600 homes. I know 2 or 3 guys that became multimillionaires. And they came to me, a couple of my friends, and said, why don't you do that? So like I said, I'm small time. So I built originally 4 homes, right? And I'll give you the numbers, but I'll stick in reais. At the time, a lot, it had to be minimum 200 square meters to be what's called a buildable lot, right? Which 2,000 square meters, 2,000 square feet. But let me stick in reais. 200 square meter lot, I'd buy that lot for 20,000 reais. I'd build a home on it that's about 60 square meters, right? 600 square feet. I build that home for about 35,000. So I'm in for 20 on the lot, 35, so 55. And it's about 5,000 reais for all the documentation, like building permits and all that, right? Okay. So 60,000 reais. Okay. When I would buy that land and go to the city to get my building permit, I would tell the city that I want to put it under the Minha Casa Minha Vida project. Right? Okay. They gave you this little lawn sign that you could put on your lawn. And those 4 homes that I built, Shaun, as the foundations are being put down, I get on a weekly basis 2, sometimes 3 families coming to me and say, look, we like this area. Here's our little paperwork. We've been approved already by the Caixa, which is their national, they have Bank of Brazil and Caixa. So we'd like to buy your home. So what I would do is I just tell them, okay, give me a 500 real deposit just so I know that you're serious. I had to complete the home. I had to finish the home. Once that home was complete, I would take that family to the Caixa Econômica. They'd have to give their documentation. I'd have to get my documentation. I would sell that home for about 80 to 90,000 reais, what I paid 60. I was making 40%. It was like taking candy from a baby. Right. Okay. So that project, and it was Lula that said Lula was loved because of that project. Right. Okay. It's a socialist program. Right. Okay. So I built 4 for myself, and the year later, some friends of mine, some investors came down from Toronto, and we ended up building total about 150 homes. Right. That we did together, and we did okay. 2018 rolls around, Bolsonaro gets elected. Right. Okay. The program was working under Bolsonaro, but it's a socialist, it's a leftist program, right? Okay, so I didn't build anything from 2018 till, and then interesting enough, in 2024, a buddy of mine calls me up and says, "Are you building Casa Populares?" And I'm a kind of guy like, I've done that, been there, done that. I said, "No, I did that in 2015." I said, "You're building Casa?" He goes, "Buddy, Lula's back in power." I said, "Jesse, I didn't even think of it." So in 2024, Shaun, I built 3 homes again because I'm still like that. I'm always like a lot of people might think, oh, this guy's all over the world. I'm conservative beyond belief, like believe me. So I always like to dip my foot in the water. So I only built 3 homes because the same thing. I did it back in 2015. It's 10 years later, so I wanted to make sure that everything was still the same. And sure enough, built the homes, sold them all 3, walked away with about 38 to 40%. This year we're building 20. Because Lula's still in power, right? Okay, but the dynamics is that Lula's in power, leftist like crazy, but he's still Like the country's still right wing. It's still like the democracy works the same, whether it's a left wing. I mean, well, I shouldn't say the same because, like I said, that this program is beneficial under a leftist government. You know what I'm saying, right? But day to day, Sean, I hear things, and again, we come to a point in our lives where we don't know what's real, what's not real. I saw a thing on YouTube that if it is real, and you could confirm because it was in your uh, province, that a teenager was on the streets preaching the Bible, and he got arrested because of that. Did you hear that?
In Alberta?
In Alberta. That was a couple of months back.
Folks, you're going to text me if that's true, and I will confirm or
So, Sean, like I said,
I don't recall a teenager, but there have been. I don't know what to say on that one.
okay. Well, Sean, I can like I said, even though I'm here, I still Canada at this point, and we talked about this in I'm a Christian. Okay, I believe in God. I believe in Jesus Christ. He's my Lord and Savior. No one's ever gonna. And Canada, when I say that I don't see that impression, is in Canada. I watch some of those YouTube, like these street preachers. I have so much. What's the word I'm looking for? I'm losing my English. Respect for these street preachers, because some videos, I've seen videos of preachers in Toronto, and just for saying the word Jesus Christ, they get spit on. Like, it's oppressive. It is oppressive. Like, our country is oppressive. Christians, there's going to be a time, in my opinion, where we are going to be, well, I think they're already being persecuted there. Okay. In Brazil, you don't have that. Shaun, I've been for 7 years that I've been here. Believe me, everyone that I come across, I ask, do you believe in God? I think in the 7, 8 years that I've been here, one person has told me they don't believe in God. It's not the same in Toronto. Ask 10 people in Toronto. I always tell my friends to test it, because I like testing, right? In Toronto, at this point in time, I don't think I'm exaggerating. If you ask 10 people if they believe in God, 7 of them are going to say no. 2 of them are probably going to spit in your face, and 1 might say yes. That's oppressive nation, in my opinion. It's
well,
oppressive.
I can say, okay, Alberta podcaster, right?
Right.
And it was only, how many years ago now, folks? It was after the Freedom Convoy, so I'm going to say 2022, so 4 years ago. First time I ever brought up the conversation of God on the podcast, and I felt pretty awkward doing it. And what you're telling me about Brazil is nobody would feel awkward about talking about God. It's like, what are you talking about? It's the opposite. So here, whether or not a kid has been arrested on the street for it, well, I already know it's more oppressive day by day. I already know by talking about God on the podcast, Jesus Christ specifically.
Exactly.
That is a wild thing. I interviewed Preston Manning. Man, how many years ago was that now? Maybe 2. And he talked about his dad having the show where he, every Sunday morning as Premier of Alberta, he'd go on and have his morning show on the radio where it was his, I don't know, what do I call it? Sermon? Something like along that lines. Yeah. And that's how it was, back in the 70s. And you fast forward 50 years and, no premier's even remotely close to that. And I was like, that's funny. I see a revival in something like that. I see people turning to Jesus all the time. In saying that, it's still an uncomfortable topic in your day-to-day life. Full stop. I just think that's the feeling here in Canada. It doesn't mean my audience is the same way. They've become very supportive of it. But it's been an interesting journey. And when you point out Brazil, you're like, no, it's like 90-some% already believe in God.
Oh yeah, it's a Christian nation. Although,
yeah, but we say Canada's a Christian nation.
Although, no. Shaun, let me give you an interesting statistic. Like, if we ever want to talk about religion, I could, like I told you, I'll spend 10 hours talking about religion. It's my favorite topic. But when I say the empire, North American empire, the cracks showing, I saw this statistic a couple of months ago, blew my mind. These mathematicians, statisticians do charts and all that, right? Okay, and they had a thing that from 1950 all the way till 1963. There's certain things like marriages, having kids, being able to buy a house. all these variables were all on the rise up until 1963. After 1963, there was about 50 variables that they used, right? Divorce and all that, mothers, having children without. They all started going downhill. Guess what happened in 1963? That's when they banned the Bible from schools and from the courts. You remember when you used to go to, well, you're young, but if you went to court, you used to put your hand on the Bible. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. They don't do that anymore in the States and Canada. The Bible's been taken out of the courts. The Bible's been taken out of the schools.
So forgive me. You said they're on the downslide. They're on the increase. You're talking about divorces.
Yeah, it's on
it's on the increase.
All these variables are going down like bad. You know what I'm saying? Not to the
Oh,
good.
bad. Yes,
right?
yes.
Right?
Gotcha. Yes.
And just so when I repress it, because I a lot of things that I remember was in Alberta. You talked about that convoy. How many? I know 3 or 4 people personally that donated to that convoy. Their bank accounts were frozen for 6-7 months. I mean, this is an oppressive country. This is ridiculous. You know what I mean? And there was I don't know if you know about this one. I think it was in Alberta as well. This pastor, during the whole COVID thing, refused to close his church. He's a Polish guy. He went to prison 4 or 5 times.
Yes.
You ever heard? You hear about that guy? Like,
well, I've interviewed the pastors that stood up during COVID. Yeah.
Okay, there you go. I like that guy. I think that guy's phenomenal. And to put a guy like that in prison, there's something wrong with our country. That's not right. That is not right. I mean,
yeah. Well, I mean, in the high times of COVID or the low times, you had, Ocean Weisblatt was the one that got arrested on an outdoor pond, and they sprinkled gravel on the outdoor ponds. They put tape on the outdoor playgrounds.
Oh,
nobody's going to do this. And, at the time, full stop, I say this all the time. At the time, I was trying to understand where the government was coming from. I'm like, well, maybe there's something there, and now you fast forward 5 or 6 years and I am just not the same guy, right? Like, it's just, you look at it and, it's always interesting to talk to somebody outside of it because, maybe I'm becoming a wackadoodle. Maybe I've lost my mind. And then you sit and talk to Carlos and you're like, or maybe our country is just losing its mind and you're an insane man in insane times.
How old are you?
I turned 40 here in May.
Yeah, you're young. So I'm 61. I think maybe it's a thing. Once you get a certain age, you don't care anymore. I don't have to be popular anymore, right? Okay. But I'll say this, which is for me is important. My son sometimes asks, Dad, why don't you come back to Canada? You can still do your business. I said, I'm like I told you, I'm extreme right wing, extreme. There's no president to me that I've ever seen that to me would. I believe in God, country, and all that. I like when I was growing up, we used to say the Lord's Prayer every day in school. I believe in that. You know what I mean? I believe in a father and mother raising their kids and everything else. And in Brazil, what I love about Brazil, abortion is illegal. Right. Okay. So I know that divorce, again, a couple of hot topics. We can debate. It's okay to have a debate that what if a girl is raped? Everyone's like, okay, so that's a debatable situation. Right. Okay. But Canada has come to the point that it's so pro-abortion. They actually they encourage it. And I don't know if you know or not, Shaun, I say this, people challenge me on it, but Canada, in most cases, a woman can have an abortion, what they call late-term abortions. I don't know if you ever heard of that thing, right? Okay?
Yes, I have.
Up to 9 months. And in certain circumstances, I've heard stories, which I believe to be true, that the child can be born and they'll abort that child if that woman went. Let me tell you something. This is biblical. This is satanic, in my opinion. Right. So, and when a country does that, if you look at all empires, every empire, I've studied these, the Roman, the Greek Empire, they all start normally with this belief in God we trust, and the God, blah, blah, blah. And then God blesses them and gives them a lot of power and they become powerful. And when they become powerful, the first thing they do is cast out God. We did this. God, and as soon as they do that, that empire falls. And North America is at that stage. Billy Grahame, I think I told you this in I love a line that Billy Grahame said. He goes, if God doesn't judge the U.S., he's going to have to apologize to Sodom and Gomorrah. U.S. aborts 2 million kids a year. That's not nice. That is not nice. You know what I mean? So Totally, totally. That's what I say. Sean, I sometimes, like I said, I get it. I know public figures. I don't have to do anything. Sometimes it's a nice freedom, but I know public figures when they have to, argue against, they have to skirt around the issue, right? Okay. Why can't someone say, yeah, I'm against abortion? I'm against abortion. And when I say I'm far right wing, I'm against abortion. Even if my daughter was raped, I'd force her to have that child. I'm against abortion. I'm not scared to say it.
Well,
Right?
I tell you what. So new guy watching politics, right? And talking about myself.
Right.
And the Conservative Party, the federal Conservative Party that Pierre Poilievre leads, they had their debate. And I wasn't a guy who watched debates. I was like, oh, whatever. I watched one, okay? I'm sitting there and I'm watching. They got, I forget, was it 6 guys and Leslie Lewis? 1 woman and the rest are men. Doesn't matter the numbers. And they ask about abortion.
And they skirt.
It was a yes or no question. Are you for it or against it? Pro-life or pro-choice, I think was how they put it. All the men, pro-choice. Leslie Lewis, pro-life. And I'm like, oh my God, just ask her why. Just ask her why. I'm curious. I don't even know where I sit on the entire thing back then.
Right.
And they just move on because they had to check a box.
Right.
And I'm like, ugh, this sucks so much. You have a leader who is pro-life. Let's ask her why. She's a woman.
Right.
The rest are men. The obvious question is why?
Right.
Why is it that you're the woman and all the men can't say that? And so we live in this, construct they've built here in Canada of what conservative is and what topics are so hot you can't touch it. It's funny. I've shut down. I just like seeing people squirm, I think, at this point, Carlos. I don't know if I'm a good dinner guest or not because, I've done it multiple times now where abortion comes up and now people look at me. I don't even want to know your thoughts. I'm like, I haven't even said anything. What do you mean? No, we're not talking about this. I'm like, well, that's a problem right there, isn't it? Isn't that
There's
just
hot
a problem?
topics. There's hot topics, but like I said, John, it's a spiritual thing. It is a spiritual thing. There's Canada, especially Canada. Like I bash Canada, but it's always such a Canada, but it's a bad country. It's like the energy there in my except for your province. Your province is you got good people in your province, but Ontario, Quebec,
I can tell you this, Carlos. The people listening to this show are from all across Canada. And I might add, I was saying this the other day to somebody who'd asked, my audience has grown in the United States. Okay, that makes sense. Ireland, that I'm still a little bit scratching my head on, and a bunch of other countries. But those 3 are the 3 big ones now. So when we talk about Canadians, and a listener pointed out this to me, the listeners of this show are salt of the earth, great people. And when you're talking about Canada, you're talking about the institutions and the things governing it. And my co-host on Fridays, who points out the fact those morons keep electing the other morons who keep pushing all these stupidity. You're like, yeah. Well, in fairness, right? So, Canada is in a tough situation right now. It just is. And
it is.
When the going gets tough, the tough get going. And I think, a ton of the audience listening to this are movers and shakers and trying to do better. But they hear things going on in Brazil and they go, or elsewhere, and they're like, I kind of want to go see that. I kind of want to feel it. Because I've interviewed, now that I'm starting to think about it, I've interviewed people all over the place. Panama is where Mikkel Thorpe is. You're in Brazil. I just had Pat Stedman, who was one of the J6 guys who went to jail for a year. He's in Poland with his family, and he talks about how it's just different. There's just this feel. I'm like, well, what is that? What is that feel? I kind of want to go see it myself.
Wow. That poor guy, these J6 guys in jail for nothing. My God. Unbelievable. It's horrible. The same thing here, Shaun. There's I think 89-year-old lady from that the thing here that she's been in prison up until today. She's in prison. Like, it's just crazy. It's such injustice that it's unbelievable. And I think the injustice, in my opinion, the injustice is because you have to be able to call things out. Like and I get it. Like I said, I get it. If I was 35 years old and I'm a politician, so you have to skirt. You can't say, why can't someone say, I'm against this, I'm for that? Like, you're hated because you tell your opinions. You know what I mean? It makes no sense to me. It just makes no sense. And at
Well,
61, I don't have to. I say my opinions.
well, I mean, here in Canada, I mean, we have state media. I don't know what more to call it than that, right? It's funded
No, it is
directly from the
absolutely state
government.
media.
So when they want a certain narrative put out and you go against the narrative, they have the attack dogs and off they go. And so you're ran
Absolutely.
through the absolute gauntlet of people attacking you. And then the pressure builds. And, I think, in the middle of COVID, we watched every premier bow down to the COVID science.
Absolutely.
You fast forward, and you have Ebby calling Albertans who want a question asked traitors, traitorous. And Danielle Smith comes out and says, listen, we're not going to use that type of language with close to 1 million Albertans, maybe more, who want a better arrangement in Canada. That is a shift in the last 5, well, for sure, 6 years since COVID hit. Because in COVID, I mean, they came out and called everybody anti-vaxxers. I mean, they were talking about the horse dewormer with ivermectin. We just pointed out on the mashup, folks, that Naheed Nenshi, the official opposition to Danielle Smith, is using ivermectin for a problem with his eyes. It's like, oh, so everybody's making fun of him because he's taking a horse dewormer, right? Like, I mean, it's just a crazy world. Before I let you out of here, I had one other question.
Sure.
You're talking about all these countries, and you're talking about, I haven't found a politician that God is the top.
Right.
What are your thoughts on El Salvador and Bukele? Do you have any?
Listen, El Salvador, you know that it was the most
dangerous places in the Western Hemisphere, and now it's safer than Canada.
Exactly, right? In 2 years or 3 years, that guy did that, right? Okay, but how did he do that, Shaun? Being tough, right? He went, like, people were. I mean, I remember all the leftists saying, "Look, he's a tyrant, he's a dictator," and he said, "You call me what you want," but he cleaned up his country. When I actually, so
and Carlos, I might add in the other thing that my ears pick up when I listen to him is he talks about God an awful lot.
God, exactly. So, and I'll just say that I said that no president is right winged enough for me. That guy gets close for me.
Carlos, if anyone wanted to, I don't know if you're looking for clients or you deal with more people or you're fine. If they wanted to get in touch with you or find anything about you, would you point them in a direction?
Sure. They can go on my website, which is brazilbeachresorts.com, right? Okay. Or they can email me at info@brazilbeachresorts.com. I will always respond back to everyone that messages me.
Carlos, appreciate you doing this. And, well, it has been dull. We could go on and on and on, and maybe we should hear at a later date. Either way,
for sure.
Thanks for doing this.